Of it. Running the floor. Embiid stuffs it.
Harden for three. James Harden with his second triple.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. We are 2 games into the Eastern Conference semifinals, and unfortunately, the Sixers are down 0-2. So a little bit of a somber day for us. It's me and Sean Bernard. Sean, how are you doing, brother?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more on the positive side than I typically am with this kind of outlook. Down 0-2, 2 winnable games. It's frustrating how it happened. I still trust the Sixers team to fight. I still think this series is far from over. Disappointing. A lot rides in the Embiid return. So got a little update with that, and we'll get into it, but we'll see.
Yeah, man. Tough one the other night. But before we get into everything, we're going to talk about the last game. We'll look forward to game 3. We'll talk about the Embiid update. There's a little bit of James Harden news as well, or some, speculations on what James Harden may do in the offseason. Before we get started today, we want to thank our sponsor, BetUS, one of the leading sportsbook and casinos in the market. I would love to take the Sixers live in this series. I'm all in. I'm back in.
Plus
I'm not worried.
Plus 700 on BetUS.
Go take those odds. Those are very good odds. And if you want to bet with us, you can use our code PICKSWAP at login and get your first bet risk-free up to $500. If you guys are interested, you can check the link in the bio here in the YouTube and also in the podcast description as well. So make sure you get involved in the action there. So the Sixers lose in, pretty ugly fashion last night. Another one of those games where, they got within 5, and every time they got within 5, it got pushed back to 10, 12. They were in it. They were out of it. They were in it. They were out of it. What did you take away from last night? There's 2 things, obviously, that have been glaring in this series, but, specifically, what about last night?
Yeah, I mean, the team scrapped. I haven't been disappointed in the effort from this team whatsoever through the first 2 games. They continually fight to get back into it. They just lack the firepower is what it comes down to. Obviously, they're going to be missing the guy who should be the league MVP, but just the importance of Embiid on both sides of the floor has been crystal clear with his absence and him not being there.
Yeah.
I thought DeAndre Jordan was a little bit better in game 2. We'll give him the shout out. He at least looked like he had some sort of livable traits as a human being on the basketball court out there. So that was nice to see. The bottom line for me, it comes down to shooting. I mean, you just simply can't win a game at the rate the Sixers are shooting. They're shooting 21.9% from 3, 14 of 64 on attempts throughout the first 2 games. And looking down is Danny Green, 2 of 14, Georges Niang, 1 of 10, James Harden, 3 of 12, Tyrese Maxey, 2 of 10. None of those guys shooting above 25% simply is not going to get it done. Georges Niang specifically, love the guy, but it's been if he's not making 3-point shots, it's tough to keep him out on the court. And even with Embiid on the court, these are difficult numbers to overcome. So the Sixers are simply shooting themselves out of this series. And I mean, you can nitpick the James Harden concerns, the Doc Rivers concerns, the backup center issues, but really you simply cannot win a game when you're just shooting at that rate. Yeah,
I mean, that's the biggest thing. They increased their percentage by 9% from game 1 to game 2, going from 18% to 27%. It's still pretty pitiful. And I mean, when you look at those shots, a lot of them were not bad shots. A lot of them were very good. There was a couple that Danny Green had, a couple that George had, and a couple that Furkan had, which we can talk about Furkan a little bit. But I know people are concerned with James Harden right now, but if he had 13 assists last night, he probably should have had instead of 9, and he finished with 20 and 13, I think the conversation is a little bit different. I know the concerns over the scoring is there, but I implore people to go back and watch that second half. He only scored 4 points in that half. Watch the way Miami's guarding him, man. They know that he's their main source of offense. Obviously, it's frustrating seeing him incapable of taking over, not being able to consistently score is frustrating because we know James Harden, we know what he has been capable of doing, but I don't know. James Harden is not in the top 5 list of concerns for me right now, or the reasons why this team is losing in this series. But like you said, shooting themselves in the foot, shooting themselves out of the series is really what they've done so far. And again, it's the offensive rebounds, it's the extra possessions, it's not closing out these defensive possessions. You talk about how good Tobias Harris has been on the defensive end, and then for him to lock up, switch onto 3 different guys in a possession, and then watch a rebound go over something. Like Furkan led the team in rebounds last night. It's like it's unacceptable things that are happening. And if they wanted a chance in these games, we talked about how important those two things were after game one. Really, it didn't get much better in game two.
Yeah, not at all. It's flat out unacceptable for Furkan to ever be leading the team in rebounds. A disappointing B-ball Paul game last night. I mean, there still were the flashes of effort. It's sure not for lack of hustle, but the production was not as solid last night. A couple other quick shooting stats that are just impressively bad is they're 4 for 20 on wide open threes, 20%, 22% on catch and shoot, 12.5% on corner threes, and Niang, Thibault, and Shake and Danny Green are combined 11.1% from three. I also didn't like the decision of leaving Shake out of the lineup. There's a few guys on this Sixers team that are capable of catching fire, and Shake is one of those guys. Like I wouldn't consider myself a heavy Shake Milton guy. I think he's not as clean of a fit as I would like him to be. But when we're searching for offense this series, like that's a great place to go in my mind, because I mean, obviously, like we remember the 37-point explosion from Shake Milton. We've seen the highs. He seemed to find his stride a little bit down toward the end of the season. And Doc definitely seems to have a quicker leash with Shake than I think he does with other guys, which was surprising me. Like Furkan over Shake to me last night didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't really understand. And I didn't even really like notice it until like the third quarter, and I was like, why isn't Shake played at all? Like not even tossing him in at all. And I don't know if you're emptying the bench, if you're doing, you're experimenting right now. Like I don't mind Isaiah Joe. He can't be shooting any worse than anyone else is shooting. And with George fouling out in 10 minutes of play, like
impressive to do. Impressive to do. That's a foul. Just about a little over every minute and a half, you're fouling somebody for 10 minutes and 20 seconds of play time for George's Niang, and he fouled out.
Yeah, that's bad. And it's also like George isn't a necessarily aggressive defender. Like it's not like he's not like he's jumping passing lanes or pressing guys out in the perimeter and getting touch fouls or anything. Like he was just. I mean, I feel like most of the time he was in the wrong place at the wrong time for a few of them. And he's not a vertical athlete, so challenging at the rim is not necessarily a thing that George does either. So you see a couple of times he was playing help defense and he just hacks the hell out of whoever it was. But I don't know. The rebounding is such a thing that I just don't understand. Miami just has people. Like, they just have guys that are just attacking the boards. They're just every possession. Whether it's PJ Tucker, whether it's Bam, whether it's Jimmy. There's guys down the list, and you could just see. I guess the biggest thing that you kind of notice at this point is how much deeper this Miami team is than Philadelphia. And obviously that was clear, and that was clear coming in. But you just see guys. One guy comes out, another guy comes in, and they stay with the pace. They don't miss a beat, and the Sixers don't necessarily have that. It's something that we'll talk about coming into the offseason. I think Daryl Morey has some blood on his hands right now, and for as much credit as we've given him, this has been a telling series about how poorly this roster is put together. If I can say it gracefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Morey deserves more criticism than anything in this series. And obviously, Joel Embiid is like the X factor in terms of everything kind of changes when he's there. Joel doesn't do the things that they're weaknesses, but he certainly covers them up. Like just having him there to be that guy just changes everything. And to talk about Morey specifically, I mean, just looking at these rosters by comparison, like Duncan Robinson still is not playing for the Heat, and he probably would be the Sixers' best bench player if he was on their roster. If you're laying out like the best bench players across all the remaining teams, I think like a good portion of the worst remaining sit on the Sixers roster. When we're talking about guys like, and no disrespect, but when we're talking about guys like Furkan, like Georges Niang, like Matisse Thybulle, these are all guys that are like just not serviceable for playoff minutes. And to be rolling out lineups with multiple of them on their court, which for the most part, I do not fault Doc Rivers in terms of like, there's just not that much he can do right now. Like he's really, I think I'm being more generous to Doc than just about anybody, but I simply don't see like what else he is trying. He's being more flexible in his rotations and lineups than I've seen him through his entire time in Philly. And I respect the trying different things, throwing different things, but there just is not the firepower there. And I mean, again, like Embiid changes everything, but that's unacceptable from a general manager standpoint to have that on your hands. When you look around the league, just look at like these guys that come off the bench, guys like Tyus Jones or DeAnthony Melton or any of these like bottom of the bench guys. Even look at the Warriors roster, like start to bottom. Guys like Damian Lee, who not that he's a terrific player by any standards, but he's like does things off the bench, and he's a guy who can go cold for multiple games, not play at all, come in and not miss a beat. And the Sixers just lack that. And like, obviously we like complimented at the time, like it was great to have Furkan back as a good story, and Georges Niang is a terrific like fan favorite guy to watch. But like when we're just comparing all these guys from a talent aspect, it just hasn't matched up from what I've hoped from Morey.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And it's like you can go down the line of any team. Like, there's just so many guys that I feel like they missed out on. Like when you look at the trade deadline and the guys that you think about a Torrey Craig, you think about a Derek White, you think about Bryn Forbes. Like there's guys out there that were available, that were made very available at times that they had a chance to get. So I don't know. Everyone's kind of been asking, like, what do they do? I think that the main thing that they need to target coming up is just a two-way wing, really, like a strong two-way wing. I don't know who that is. Again, it's something that we can talk about later. I was looking down the line of the 2022 free agents coming up this summer. I was looking at this morning just to take a peek. I'm not giving up on this series yet, so we're not going to go full-blown off-season mode, obviously, until the fat lady sings. But there's guys out there that they need to get, and there's guys out there that need to be on this team in order for them to have a chance. But I mean, you want to talk about anything else in game 2? Like, I don't know how much else there was to really. Charles Bassey coming in and getting a block immediately. I was laughing my ass. I was like, of course, he gets in for the last 2 minutes and sends one into the stands. But
yeah, a credit to both Bassey and Paul. Anytime they have any opportunity, they've played their ass off and done everything possible. Not that it's shown any real effects in the decision making, but they really are giving their all to earn minutes, which there's nothing more you can ask out of them in that regard. I do want to talk a little more about Maxine Harden specifically. I mean, Maxie with 34 points, Harden with 20. Maxie, I was pretty happy with last night. 12 of 22 from the field. Got to the free throw line 11 times. Seemed to be in attack mode. Made a couple of just game-changing plays in terms of transition. There were a lot of just sparks from Tyrese Maxey to keep the Sixers in the game. So massive credit to him. I appreciate him stepping up. The James Harden thing, man, it's difficult. It's getting difficult. I feel like we're running back like a little bit of the Ben Simmons talk in terms of like I'm seeing look at all the 3-pointers he created. He obviously had 9 assists last night. He's running these offense incredibly effectively, but there just is still that lack of scoring pop. And I mean, 1 for 5 from 3. He ended with 20 points, got to the line 7 times. There's like still positives there, but he's 6 of 15 from the field. I just like one of the criticisms I've always heard from James Harden, and it has like carried with him throughout his Houston days and beyond, is how he will shoot you out of a game. In some respects, like I've been wanting to see that in the series. I would rather go down with Harden shooting the ball like 25 times because that's what the Sixers need right now. They're like, obviously the barrage of 3-pointers from the complementary pieces is not working. Maxey's getting his. Tobias has gotten his 21 points again last night. Banged 2 threes. Another good Tobias game. Continue giving the credit there. But I just want James Harden to have a takeover mode, and he just doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because that's what you kind of want that from me. You kind of expect that from James Harden. When you ask any NBA fan, what does James Harden do? The first thing you think of is score. And that's been kind of the place that he's been lacking. I just think without, another prominent offensive player right now, it's difficult for him. Yeah. It's hard to, it's just weird in between because I don't have a problem really with what James Harden has done. I think at this stage in his career, this is who he is, not in a bad way at all. I'd like to see him tap into that, but the shots are not coming easy at all. Yeah. Miami is doing everything. Like they're not letting a screen and roll happen at all. Like they come up and double him as tough as they can. They're not letting him pick apart their defense, and they've done a great job of adjusting because you see sometimes he's able to do that. Reed will come up and screen and he'll wait for a second and then throw that underhanded bounce pass, and they picked that off once or twice last night. Like Miami's adjusting to him. Miami is doing what they can to stop him from being effective, especially in the half court. But to go into Maxey, I thought he was incredible last night. The shots are not falling from beyond, like you said, but he just has an incredible ability to take over at times, and pushing the pace is something I wish that they had really put their head down and tried to do more often in these first 2 games, and keeping Miami on their toes and a little bit uncomfortable, which they haven't been able to do. Miami sits in that zone a lot, which has really kind of mucked up their whole offense. So I don't know. I don't really know where to put the blame right now. I don't know whose fault it is right now. They're just not, as capable to keep up with this team. But I just don't think Miami is like playing that much better than the Sixers. Like I don't think that Miami is like putting together these fantastic games and showing that they're a much better team than them. The Sixers are just missing their best player and arguably the best player in the league. So I think it's kind of just boiled down to the fact they're not making shots and they don't have a reliable 25 plus score, which most other teams have. So, at this point it's hard to like, it's frustrating because of the outcomes of these games, but it's hard to like pinpoint exactly what it is.
Yeah, no, that's it. They just Joel Embiid is not here, and one of like the things we talked about going into this series is like the Heat are better coached, have better defensive scheme, deeper, better bench production, but the Sixers have Joel Embiid, and I think having Joel Embiid was enough to make up for all of that. And I really do believe if he was here, start to finish and healthy in the series, the Sixers would win the series. Now, when you take Joel Embiid off the Sixers, they pretty much are lacking in every single category you compare these two teams. They just simply do not have the horses to keep up with the Miami Heat team with Embiid off the court. But it is frustrating because, frankly, when you look around the league, like the Miami Heat are the least intimidating team left in this playoffs. Like they're a team that I really think, assuming that they do win the series, which I'm not chalking it up to that. I don't think this series is over by any means, but like the Bucks are going to sweep them if they advance. The Bucks are the real deal. Both the Bucks and Celtics are much more real deal threats than this Miami Heat team. And I get they do their scrappiness. I get they have their positive aspects, but it is very frustrating to just see the series go 2-0 in their favor when I really don't feel like they're a much better team. And I mean, they for sure are the better team in terms of the production, but with Joel Embiid on the court, it's a completely different story this series.
Yeah, so if you want to move into that, so Embiid has been listed out for right now for Friday's game, tomorrow's game. But there's been a little bit of nuance to that. He hasn't cleared protocols, so for right now, he is, he has to be ruled out. But there's subject to change for that. So there's still some hope for him to play tomorrow. Do you expect him to be available tomorrow, or do you think, and if he is, do you think it's, the 5:00 injury report that we're going to get that says Embiid's playing, or do you think it's probably earlier on in the day?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to play tomorrow. He was only able to look at his phone as of Tuesday. He's still having like some concussion symptoms. He hasn't done any basketball related activities. He's sat out of the team film today. Hasn't really been around the team at all. It feels like we're trying to do a lot in a very short amount of time. And considering that this now has happened over a week ago and that he's still dealing with some effects, it's just not a positive sign as this guy to play basketball. And obviously his health comes first. He's the franchise centerpiece, and they have to do whatever is right to protect him and make sure he's fine. Embiid's a guy who's also, his toughness should not be doubted. If he's cleared by any extent, he absolutely will play and leave his all out there. But concussions are just a tricky thing in terms of coming back from. Like, it's not like an injury that you can just tape up and play through. This is something that you have to go through all the procedures, all the processes the NBA lays out. And I guess that's kind of what the Sixers are at disposal of, is getting through Embiid. From Doc's press conference today, it sounded like there's still a lot that needs to happen. So I'm hopeful still, but not optimistic that his return is game 3.
Yeah, I've kind of been ignoring all the signs. Just be like, he's gonna play. He's gonna play in game 3. He's gonna play in game 3.
Just like he should. Like, it's like
almost just manifesting that. Just saying, okay, he's going to. It would be really brutal if he doesn't. Just it just feels like if game 3 isn't a win, this series is kind of wraps, and that hurts because I just think it goes so much differently. I mean, obviously, like, of course it does if Embiid is in the lineup. But it just sucks. It just sucks so bad because it's going to go down. Worst case scenario, this goes down as a really bad look on this team, and I just don't think it was the actual way it's going to play out. This series is showing the signs and showing the weaknesses of this team, but all of that is remedied by Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
If he's in the game. So it sucks that this is the way it's been working out. Obviously, like you said, his health comes first. He's been through so much, and he played so well this year. He played in so many games, the most in his career. And, he gets to the first round, he suffers an injury, and then he suffers another injury that keeps him out for this series. So, just like Scotiabank Arena is a cursed, wretched place that no one should be happy there. And it just sucks that this is the way it's played out. But I'm going to keep myself in an optimistic mindset here. I'm hoping that if tomorrow morning he's able to clear protocols, that he's going to put that mask on and show up, and that the Wells Fargo Center is going to be bumping one way or another. But if Embiid returns for game 3 with the mask and they get a win, I think the tides change completely in this series.
Yeah, I also think they can steal a game without him too. I think they've been close on both games 1 and 2. Obviously, the score hasn't ended that close, but they've been in the game for just about start to finish and fighting, getting a boost from the home crowd, and just the shooting percentage. I boil down to the Sixers are due to connect and get hot, man. Like
Yeah.
the Heat went a little bit back to their more so back to the normal self. They were obviously the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league this year. They shot 48.3% from three in game 2, 14 of 29. Obviously, that makes it tough. The Sixers have mixed in a lot of zone defense, which makes it difficult when they're shooting at that rate and really just can't be done. That's kind of that, and
Yeah.
the offensive rebounds are the negatives with zone. But talking about the Sixers specifically, I mean, shooting 21.9% through 2 games when they're 36.4% average on the year, there has to be like an overcompensation to get the number closer to that. And just shooting 15% below your average through 2 games is, to me, just unsustainably bad. So
Yeah.
with the home crowd there, and we're talking about real deal shooters too, like Danny Green, Georges Niang. These guys obviously have their limitations in their game, but what they can do is shoot the basketball. And if those guys can get hot, knock down some threes, the Sixers are absolutely able to steal a game without that. If they can even it, or not even it, if they can go cut it to 2-1 with Embiid still lingering and coming back, the series tides are certainly changing. So I still have optimism for tomorrow.
Yeah, you're not in trouble till you lose at home. So, protect home court and you're feeling okay. Can we talk about the fact that like Boston and Milwaukee is getting like 4 days in between
Yeah, I don't know what's
their
up with that
games
either.
2 and game 3, and the Sixers are playing every other night. And then like if Embiid had 3 days off in between games, like he's probably playing in game 3. So it's just a weird way that things play out. It just seems, I mean, unfortunately, so Sixers like to not get that break. But it is what it is. You got to play with the cards that are dealt to you. It seems like the guys that are able to play are in good spirits still. I loved what Tyrese Maxey said last night about Paul Reed.
Yeah.
And he's right. I mean, if he had the chance to play through this season, things might be different. Do you think that like, I don't even know, like, what is the change, going into game 3? Do you just have to keep plugging away and hope you make shots?
They just have to execute like not perfectly, but pretty close to it. Like there's
Yeah.
not a lot of margin for effort in terms of they are undermanned. They are the less talented team with the players that they have on the court. So they have to execute everything perfectly. And I mean, it's the same things through both games. It's obviously the poor shooting. It's the offensive rebounds. Looking back to game 2, they cut out a little. They had 15 in game 1. They only had 8 in game 2, but the Heat still out rebounded the Sixers by 10 rebounds. And I mean, getting some sort of production from center. Again, DeAndre Jordan was better in game 2. I do want to give him credit. There's a whole kind of counterculture of DeAndre Jordan sticking up for him right now, which to me is a little crazy. I saw there's a whole YouTube video breaking it down, a whole bunch of stuff going around Twitter, which to me, I mean, I'm not backing down from the hill that he was absolutely horrid and has been for most of his time in Philly. But getting some sort of production there has to be just somebody that gets hot. That's pretty much what's missing. Is they need to continue to be doing. Game 2, I was more encouraged than I was game 1. I thought they played a pretty clean game. They cut a ton of turnovers out. They need to keep pushing the pace. Their transition numbers are off the charts better than their half court. Miami's still swallowing them up in the half court. And just let Maxey run has to be the tactic. I think the more and more he can get out in transition, the better it is for the Sixers. But there's not really, like you said, there's not a finger point, put it on one thing that you need to change. They can win these games. They need a lot of breaks to go their way. The home crowd, I do think, is going to be a factor. This team's going to keep competing. They've competed all 48 minutes through the first 2 games, so don't expect them to roll over.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to even think, mess with the rotations even more. There's guys that are getting minutes. I haven't gotten minutes since like January. So it's a weird situation for them to be in right now. It's strange that like one guy, missing Embiid has now kind of snowballed into like Furkan getting minutes. So, I think you go back to Shake a little bit more. And like, again, I don't know why you don't give Bassey a chance rebounding wise. Like, hell, I don't even care if you put him and Reed on the court at the same time. Like,
I would love it.
If you got to rebound and play defense, like those are the ways to go. And I think, offensively, you talk about half court, how kind of miserable they've been in the half court. Really, to me, that boils down to making threes. Miami sits in that zone. They're going to force them to pass the ball. And, a lot of times in a zone, the outcome is a 3. And with Danny Green struggling and George struggling as much as they have, and even Tyrese and Harden, not playing, you're not shooting the ball very well. it kind of sucks because you're like, okay, we're kind of stuck in this. Miami's just going to sit in this zone and make it difficult for us. So if they can turn the tides there and start making some shots, I know we talked about this after game one. It's hard to say, okay, just make more shots and you win the game. But like, that's kind of what it comes down to. As basketball players, the shots that you're taking have to go in. I don't know why Danny Green, I've seen him dribble into inside, like to the paint, like more times than I'm comfortable with him doing. Missed a dunk last night. Like, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
I know that was crazy in the Raptors series. It's a little bit different then than it is now. Just put the ball in the basket. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough right now because I'm still like you said, after game two, I'm still feeling optimistic that they have a chance in this series. A lot of people are rolling over. We're not going to do that here. We're gonna stay, with the foot on the gas, and hopefully, there's good news pending. Hopefully.
Yeah, and to touch on just the youth aspect in terms of, I mean, first off, Doc Rivers is just throwing whatever he has at the board,
Yeah.
seeing what sticks at this point, which I'm incredibly fine with. But
Yeah.
as far as like, he's obviously been notorious for not playing young guys and being scared to give young players minutes. At this particular stage, like to me, it is almost a benefit to look toward the young guys in terms of they will try their ass off and they are not scared of the moment. And I mean, I felt that way with Maxie last year. Maxie played a massive role in winning a game against the Hawks last year.
Yeah.
Stepped up in the moment after being in and out of the lineup the whole year, which when we look at the production we're seeing this year, pretty insane based on his skill set that he didn't get more time last year. But looking at this year specifically, I feel a similar way about Paul Reed and Charles Bassey, that they're not going to be intimidated by the moment. And I get the plus in the veteran comment and playing the older guys is the experience and they've been through it. But guys that just are unafraid and will try every second they're out there, compete their brains off, is an appeal to me. Like it's not a big deal. If you run Charles Bassey in for whatever minutes, he fouls 6 times and out. He gets fouls out quicker than Georges Niang did in the last game. That's totally fine with me. Like, let him give it a shot. Let's just mix it up. The Sixers still have zero pressure on them. They're now down 0-2. Only 7% of teams have come back from a 2-0 series and win, and they still don't have their best players. So there's zero pressure on the Sixers. They might as well just mix it up, do their best. It's disappointing that if this is how the season ends, and it feels like we're kind of at a crossroads where this happens frequently, where there's just something that doesn't break, whether it's oftentimes an Embiid injury or whatever. But it's frustrating because I really do believe that they can win the series and they're still capable, but it's one game at a time. Win game 3. If Embiid comes back for game 4, and the Sixers are in pretty good position. So this thing is far from over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Raptors, the Kawhi Raptors that beat the Sixers went down 0-2 to the Bucks in the following series, and they came back and won. So this, a lot of people look at that number and say, "Oh, it's not going to happen." I don't know. I think with the way that this series has gone so far, this Miami team hasn't shown me that, even with an Embiid returner, even without an Embiid return in game 3, that the Sixers don't have a chance. They are missing Kyle Lowry. His impact is not nearly as much as Embiid, clearly, but he is a guy that they miss, on both ends of the floor. He's their floor general. He's a leader. But I don't know, man. I'm still optimistic. And when you talk about a guy like Bassey, to go back to that a little bit, I just don't really understand the hesitancy. Like, I know we're not in the room. I know we're not at practices and everything. We're not at shoot-arounds and, what have yous. But he is the blueprint. Like, he is the archetype of player that plays amazing next to James Harden. He's a guy that sets really good screens. He, I think we've talking about this, but that COVID time where he was playing, and he's such a natural roller. He's such a natural screen and roller. He does that so well. He's vertical. He's long. He's athletic. He's a good rebounder. He's a rim protector. Like, he's checking the boxes and blowing the whistles. And I just don't understand where you go wrong. If you're playing Paul Reed, you can play Charles Bassey, and Reed's now the backup center. He's playing 20 plus minutes a night. And as much as I like Paul, there's a lot of holes in his game. There's a lot of things that he doesn't do. And some of those things are things that Bassey does really well. I just don't understand, really.
And also, to me, this is a criticism on Doc Rivers specifically when he talks about how DeAndre Jordan knows the scheme better, that kind of thing. If a guy that we got this year knows your scheme better than Paul Reed has been with the organization for 2 years now. Charles Bassey has had all year to learn it. There's no way what you're trying to get them to do is so complex that he has not at least pieced it out. And if you throw him out there and it doesn't work, there's no blame on anybody for this. It's like we see what's going on.
Yeah.
We are trying anything that sticks. It's like you might as well give it a shot. It might change something up. Bam has still continued to be a problem. I mean, he finished last night. He had another 23-point game, 20 in both games. And then I don't know. It's tough to just think where we go from here. I also do want to talk a little more about the James Harden stuff and the looming contracts. There's been a couple kind of whispers and reports and coming out with what the expectation from there is. There's some reports that it's looking likely that he'll opt into the $47 million player option. There's also some whispers that he would be okay with signing for less money for the Sixers, and that's kind of something that he had talked about with Morey beforehand. Morey obviously would know him better than anyone. This is going to be a pretty prominent offseason discussion, but do you have any early thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of had this conversation yesterday with a couple of my friends, and I was just like, he's going to get the money somewhere. You made the trade. Like, you have to do whatever you have to do to keep him around.
Wow.
You're putting your eggs all in one basket. I understand that. If he opts in, you made the trade knowing he could potentially opt in. So that makes sense. If he does, that's a lot of money for him, to pass up. If he's willing to take a pay cut to give this team a better chance, like, he deserves a lot of credit because there's a lot of guys that wouldn't do that. And for him, go get your money, do what you got to do. I think he's a super valuable asset to this team. Clearly, I think him and Embiid have a lot of room to grow. I think him and Tyrese Maxey have a lot of room to grow. I think he's unlocked Tobias Harris to a level that we haven't seen in a long time. And if he's able to get healthy this offseason and come back as, the best version of himself at 30, however many years old, whatever it takes to keep him around, I'm okay with that. I know it sounds like a lot, but to me, money's not really all that real. It's not my money. So, if he's making that money, he's making that money. It's going to be here. It's going to be somewhere else. And we're going to hate it if he goes somewhere else and has a great year. So I don't know. I see why people are kind of hesitant though.
Yeah, I feel a little differently about it. I mean, to start off with, like, James Harden is not the James Harden he was, but he's still an incredibly useful player. He still has been the highest level playmaker that this offense have seen maybe forever, in terms of just how intelligent he is with the ball, the high IQ, the passes he makes, the things he sets up for opponents. He still has an improved offensive ability that is nice. There is still some secondary. My concerns with Harden is I totally agree that the trio specifically of Embiid, Harden, Maxey works. That's very fluent, very connected. I like the way that three is together. I would love to have James Harden around long term. If it's between giving him that money or he walks, I'm totally fine with letting him walking. If he opts into the 47 mil for next year, I think I would prefer that. That's, for me, the best case scenario. I'm not confident to hand this guy a max deal right now. And while it would be disappointing for him to walk, I mean, that's, to me, the necessarily evil. He is not the answer for a max long-term solution. He's only 32 years old. Like, I feel like we keep talking about him like he's ancient. Like, Chris Paul is 5 years older than him. And the way Chris Paul has progressed into his later years while still finding areas to pick his spots and take over games is just, he's so much more comfortable at it than James Harden is. And this is a testament to Chris Paul more so than it is an insult to James Harden, for sure. He's obviously going to have to learn how to do this as time progresses, but it just feels like he doesn't have that, like, foot on the gas moment, like, at all, which is frustrating to me.
Yeah, I also think, though, back to, Chris Paul later in his Houston, his second year there, he was dealing with the injuries. Everyone was kind of like, oh, like, is Chris Paul done? Is he cooked? And he had that resurrection year in OKC. He's come out and been incredible in Phoenix. I think, you talk about this hamstring injury. Again, I'm not a doctor. None of us really know what's going on, but we saw it last year with Harden. He still has, there's still stuff there. We've seen it at times this year. It seems like he's tweaked it a few times. I don't know. I like him here as, the secondary leader. I like him as, a co-star to Embiid. I like what he's done with Maxey. And, you have money to play with. If it means that you have to say farewell to Tobias Harris, as much as he's been incredible, you got to do what you got to do. You're trying to build a championship team. And I think if he's willing to take less money, for a couple more extra years, oh my gosh, like, it'd be a perfect situation. Even if he opts in, you got some money to work with. And I don't know. You don't make that trade without the idea that you're going to move on with him and try to figure something out going forward. It makes kind of no sense for him to be here for a couple months and to move on. We've done that once and we've seen how it worked out. So I think it's kind of imperative for them to keep him at this point.
Yeah, I guess where my brain is going at when looking long term. I mean, first off, the Tobias contract. Obviously, this has been talked about forever. For me, the easy transition there is the money that Tobias makes. That all is going to Tyrese Maxey. The second Tyrese Maxey wants a max deal, which he is going to be a max deal guy. There's no doubt in my mind about it. You absolutely give him that. Like, to me, the priority is 100% locking up Maxey long term far more than it is James Harden. Maxey's a guy I think seriously will handle the keys to this organization moving forward. I'm not even sure Harden's capable of being the number 2 guy on a championship team. And I think in my mind, when this trade happened and this was now Embiid's legitimate co-star, where he could he could be the one guy and have like a legitimate like 1A or 2 guy next to him, which he's never really had. Ben Simmons has been the guy that's a connective guy in a roster, that he does a lot of little things. Jimmy Butler obviously had his flash there, but like he's never had a really reliable guy. And I think Jimmy Butler and James Harden are obviously massively different in terms of what they do as players on the court, but he just doesn't have this is still Embiid uplifting the rest of the roster so much more. And now we're getting up to Embiid's gonna be 29. He's still, my window of his prime is still much larger than I think a lot of people. But the reality is, like, one injury and that drastically changes. And if James Harden then is your number 1 guy, that's not a recipe for postseason success.
Yeah, but I think the idea is that you have to, do what's best for Joel. You have this window right now. And like you said, I'm sure the Sixers are thinking of extending Maxey now, like trying to do their best that they can. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was the move. We talked about how incredibly important that Simmons trade was, and it was the next step to whatever the franchise is trying to do after this. So making that move, I think it the writing was on the wall at that point. He's either going to be here for, at least a year and a half or probably 3 to 5 years. So I'm okay with it. I whatever happens. I'm assuming that Morey wants to keep him here, and he said he wanted to be here. So I'm assuming he's going to do his best to be here too. And I'm sure Embiid likes playing with him. I'm sure Maxey likes playing. I'm sure all these guys have enjoyed playing with him. So I think he'll be around. I think it just depends, on what the money looks like. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay with it. One of my friends that's a Heat fan said he was John Wall 2.0, and I was like, okay, give me a break, like whatever. Yeah. He also was pissed about the foul call that Harden got at the end of the first half on the 3, and I was like, man, like give me a break.
Yeah, I feel like the tides have turned so much in the landing space thing for James Harden specifically. Obviously, he's been a guy that capitalized on that right from the get-go. That was kind of a James Harden staple. But I feel like it's now ignored on him more often than it's called. And he has that weird kind of like slant in his landing, which I think is a lot of reason for why, like the way he just it's in like a diagonal, the way he comes down. So I think it looks a little weird, but he is guys in his landing space fairly often.
Constantly.
Yeah. I was happy that one was called. There's more of an argument that that's a flagrant than it is not a foul in my mind. So I'm glad that was whistled, and as it should be moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a couple missed calls on him so far this series. He's such a controversial and like strange player. He's such a quirky dude too. Like I don't know. I can't get a read on him like as a person. He goes from being like, he can be annoying. I can understand people getting annoyed with him, and then other times he's like, oh, like just a vibe. We're all like chilling. We're all feeling like, I don't know how to gauge him, but a lot of people are frustrated with him. A lot of people are blaming this series on him. I'm okay with it. I have no problems with James Harden. I think people have to accept him for what he is, because he's still a very incredible player. Sure. It's just not putting up 30 a night. I wish he could still put it in another gear to get yourself 25. I have a hard time believing it's not there. Maybe I'm blind to it, but
I don't have a hard time believing. Like, I think this is the James Harden we got in terms of, if you look at him, like, obviously this guy led the league in scoring 3 times, a former MVP, has led the league in assists as well. Has done it all. He's the only player in NBA history who's led the league in assists and points. throughout his career, which is
Yeah.
wild and a testament to his unique skill set for sure. But I just like looking back to his success in those Houston days, he's legitimately like 15 pounds heavier now. He's got a whole different build than he had then. I don't 32 years old. I don't believe it's just like get the hamstring better and he's back. I think a lot of this is James Harden figuring out how to play in this stage of his career. And I wasn't concerned with it at the start because he's never been a guy relying on straight athleticism. He's always been more crafty, more just his handle, just the artfulness of his handle and the deliberateness of what he does. But I do have some concerns now. He just doesn't separate the same way. And one more comment about the fouls. It's just like such a unique whistle on him in terms of I feel like the refs will ignore like blatant ones and then he'll get like this weird like cheap half slap on the arm and it's just like I mean, I guess I don't know if it even evens out. It's really bizarre to kind of watch. Sometimes it's super whistle happy, sometimes it's not, but definitely one of the most unique whistles of any player.
Yeah, there was a play, I think it was in game one, and he was driving, left side, and he like ran into Dedmon like with the ball in his face and just like ran into him like that and got the whistle. And then there was a 3 where he got fully hacked on the arm, no call, like 3 possessions later. Yeah, it's very strange. I think the officials have he's kind of broken the NBA officiating crew like all through top to bottom. So who knows, man? But give him an off season with Embiid. I like it. So I'm okay with it. But I don't know. What's your outlook for game 3 though? I mean, it's very contingent, obviously, on who's available and who's not. The big name, obviously, being Joel. But what's your outlook for game 3, regardless?
Yeah, I don't think it is contingent. I think Sixers win either way. I love it. I think they're not getting swept in the series. I think that as much as the scores have been far off, it's been a close series so far. And having the home crowd, they're due to get shooting better. I think game 3 is where they scrape one and see what happens from there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think regardless, like you said, of Embiid's availability, I think they come out. I just hope there's a bite. I just hope there's a little bit of, extra. Give me get in a scuffle. Somebody get pissed. Like, I don't mind that. And I hope it's Paul Reed. Like, I hope it's somebody that, gets the fire going a little bit. I don't know who it is. They're a little bit too smiley for me. As much as I love Tyrese, I want him to punch somebody or something. I just I want to see some fire. But they've done it. Yeah. Okay. No, that's no. But
yeah.
No, don't hurt anybody. I'm not going to say that, but I want to. There's been they've fought. They've been resilient for sure, especially in these first 2 games. They've been resilient despite having such a hard time. But I'm still optimistic. I'm going to stay optimistic. They're not going to go down 3-0. Definitely not at home. The Philly crowd is so much more impactful than that Miami crowd. Again, another basically empty game. I saw a tweet. Some Miami fan was like defending the Heat fans, and he was like, sent a picture of like the best home attendance, and like the Heat were like 6th or something. And he's like, "Shut up, you idiot. We show up late." And I'm like, that is not the flex that you think it is. Like, that's not. People are like, "Oh, okay, you're right." That is a sign of a bad fan base, and I'm going to stick by that. I don't have, at least like Boston fans are the worst. Obviously, they're the worst, but at least they show up. At least they're like in your face about being the worst. Miami just is like at the club, and they're like, cheering on the Heat from whatever strip club they're at. So, to me, not a big fan of this Miami team. But it is what it is. I hope the Sixers can turn their fortunes around here in game 3. But I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready to see them make it happen. So series is still alive in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get at you after that game. I guess we'll probably. Is game 4 on Sunday?
Yeah, it is.
All right, so we'll probably get you after game 4. Oof. All right. That's kind of tough, but we'll figure it out one way or another. Hopefully we're back even series after game 4, heading back to Miami. We'll talk to you guys early in the week next week to recap this weekend and the things that have happened or haven't happened in that time. But if you want to keep up with us until then, you can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at JSPrain17. Follow the pod at PickSwapPod. Make sure you check out the YouTube. Get us anywhere you get your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple iTunes. Make sure you check out BetUS. Check out the code or the link in our bio and use code PickSwap at login for your first bet. Risk-free up to $500. We appreciate you guys for tuning in as always, and we'll talk to you guys after games 3 and 4.